packages done faster, because there isn't enough time to do the packages you need to do. So the time you are spending, if you could do it faster, obviously you get more done, or you get time to do something more fun than packaging. So, so in order to kind of set this up, I wanted to use, the AdminStudio story is always, it's a 6-step process for packaging, but I took rationalization out, because rationalization is more about a Windows migration. You're going to see which applications do you really need to package. So for these purposes, I'm keeping it down to these. And because we have to pick an amount of time, and this is all a little variable, I wanted to set the stage and say, for this example, we'll say that a package takes 6 hours to complete. And this is the breakdown. So there's the identify part of the task. So you need to figure out what is the latest version of this application. You got to go find the download, wherever that is, make sure it's a good one. And then you need to research and test the command line. You know, you could use IT Ninja, app deploy. Obviously, I spent a bunch of time earlier in my career helping focus on this stage specifically. But then you need to figure out, you know, once you have that command line, what kind of customizations do you need to do for your environment. And so this is kind of the biggest piece of the work, actually. So assess compatibility. You got to see, you know, before you go through all this work of packaging the application, let's make sure that it is going to work on the operating system you're sending it to. So you can research what the vendor says about their support. You could obviously just run it on a virtual machine, see that it works the way you expect. There's also, you know, if you have AdminStudio, we have reports that we can show you. We run a bunch of tests against the installer itself to see if the installer appears to have any issues with Windows that you can identify and resolve before you even create your package. And then, you know, dependencies, understanding what has to be there first, if it needs Java, if it needs .NET, and making sure that your package takes that into consideration as well. Then, you know, you've figured out what issues there are. Now you got to spend some time fixing those issues. So depending on the tools you have, again, AdminStudio has some ability to automatically fix a lot of issues that exist, but not all. So sometimes it will explain that there's a problem with this, and you need to fix it. You know, here you have the tools to do it, but not everything has a easy button. So these can take some time. Again, this all depends on the application. Some are going to take longer than others. This is trying to come up with an average that we can use as an example. Then the actual package or repackage state, and in all my presentations, I would always talk about the difference between packaging and repackaging, and you know, I'm using them both here because sometimes you'll take the vendor command line and wrap that, and that is your package, and sometimes that won't suffice, and you need to repackage it, make your own custom silent setup. I know you're all very familiar with that, so I won't spend time going into it, but that's what's representative of this step. You know, what do you need to get the application silently installed the way that you want it installed? And then publish. I'm not saying deploy, because deploy is kind of a separate piece. It's just taking that package that you've created and putting it into the distribution system. If it's SCCM, that means getting it out there into SCCM so that it's with all the application model data that it needs to properly be deployed. Again, this is another thing that AdminStudio can do and save some time, but for everybody, it's kind of the same steps. So this is the 6-hour process we're going to start with. I kind of broke it down a little easier so we can attack it in sections. It's about 2 hours for the identify and research piece, and then the compatibility and resolving of issues is about another third, and then finally the packaging, repackaging, publishing piece is about a third. So that's kind of how it breaks out and how we'll try to attack this problem to determine what we can do to optimize things. So So one thing, and I risked getting people at Flexera upset with me because the story's always been to do all these steps. You run all the tests, you look at the results, you fix them, and that's the recommended process. Boom, 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 everything all the way through consistently, which is very good, but how many people run tests against all their applications and resolve the issues before you install it on the first system? Anybody at all? So 0 hands. So the reality is that that recommendation is very sound in concept, but in the real world, it doesn't always make sense. So the reports that you can get are still very valuable, particularly those around suitability and dependencies. You can save yourself the trouble of going down a path and doing something that doesn't work. But to actually do the compatibility testing and ICE rule violations and trying to fix those things often doesn't pay off. So you could make the package perfect, but maybe it would have worked anyway, and you could have saved yourself some time. So all those hands that didn't go up, you obviously already understand that that work isn't necessarily worth doing up front. So the idea then is to use that information that you get, those reports and that process, reactively instead of proactively. So skip that step, go straight from your research and your package and publish it right away. That could be on some virtual machines just to see that it works, or it could be some pilot systems to see with different configurations and permission levels that the application works the way you expect. But the idea is to just get it out there quickly and see if there's a problem. And if there is a problem, and there's going to be a failure rate, then you come back into the reports in AdminStudio and you can resolve the issues and fix your problem after the fact. And you saved yourself that chunk of time that you would have spent doing it up front. But this is not groundbreaking because nobody raised their hands, so that tip did not save anybody any time yet. But so in our theoretical package here, we've gotten that chunk down, I think, being a little conservative, say 15 minutes. So because you're not going to do that work up front, now you're just pushing it out. So you're basically skipping that step. And then we'll look at the next thing, packaging, right? So how many people repackage everything? So still a couple, that's how we've always done it, and it gives you complete insight and control. But when the vendor command line works, it can be a much faster way to getting something done. And then if you need to customize it, it depends if you have the skills, right, to do some things with a script around the vendor installation to fix it the way you want. If you're not that familiar with scripting and that isn't a skill that you have yet, I recommend that as an excellent career path for anybody in packaging to be very good at scripting. But the idea is, if it's not just delete a shortcut or do something very simple in a script, then it could become a candidate for repackaging just because it gets you around the extra work you'd have to do to customize the vendor setup. But with different wrappers, like how many people are wrapping with PowerShell? Okay, and how many of those are using PowerShell app deploy toolkit? So virtually all the same hands. So this, it's nice that there's just kind of a standard now, and this is open source. Anybody that's not using it should consider it. How many people are wrapping with Wise? Couple? We went to our customer base and we were talking to them about the PowerShell app deploy toolkit, and we added support in AdminStudio for it so that you can just right-click, wrap, and you're done off of a template very quickly, and you can do it in batch. And that story was exciting to a lot of people because they understand wrapping, but they were wrapping with Wise because that's what they'd always used before, and they understood it, and they just didn't adopt the PowerShell app deploy toolkit. So that was why we decided to add Wise script to the suite. We still have PowerShell app deploy toolkit in there, and that's the recommendation. But for those customers that aren't familiar with scripting, the Wise script editor provides you basically a graphical interface to creating a script. And so we support it the same way in terms of wrapping. And then there's also a tool that we provide that allows for automated packaging. And I'm going to walk you through these. You might have seen on the agenda, I was originally going to have a guest or a co-speaker that was going to run through demos, and last minute he couldn't make it. So I've got screenshots, but I think it's just as effective and maybe a lot less prone to error. So this is the wrapping interface. So if you're using the PowerShell Deploy Toolkit already, it's pretty straightforward. But in terms of being able to automate that and make it easy in AdminStudio, we've added the ability to wrap, and then you choose, do you want to do it with PowerShell or do you want to do it with Wise? And then you just point to the directory where the PowerShell App Deploy Toolkit is installed or your Wise wrapper. And then you can either have it set up so that when you pull an application into AdminStudio, it automatically wraps it, or you can go into any application either at the package level and say wrap, and it looks something like this. It'll show you the command line parameters if you already have them in there, or we can also recommend them programmatically by looking at what type of setup it is. We'll recommend, okay, it's Windows installer, we understand that it's Wise, we understand that it's NSYS, we understand it. There's, depending on the product used to create that, that setup, it has some inherent silent installation capabilities. So we can programmatically recommend those to you. So for the install, the uninstall command, and then you choose which wrapper you want. PowerShell, exe is the Y script. And then where you want it to go. For some reason, something's missing. And then it just goes through the wrapping process. This is kind of what it looks like. So the template, you could customize to look and do anything you want. If you do have to script around the installer and have it move the shortcut or change registry entries, this could be the place to do it on an application by application basis. But for a generic template that you're going to use for all your packages, it's pretty straightforward. This one template would be used. So this is kind of a before, and this is an after. That same highlighted area now has the silent command line parameters inserted into it. This is the same type of thing in YScript. It's here. The silent installation parameters are inserted. So, and in either case, you can open the YScript or the PowerShell script in their native IDEs and make any changes you want, observe this, tweak it, and so forth. But the idea is if you want to be consistent and always do it, it can become a step that's automatic, basically. And then the other tool we have that can speed this area up is called the Automated Application Converter. Has anybody used the Automated Application Converter in AdminStudio? Handful of people. So it's, I'll show you. So there's a conversion wizard that you can launch, and it will come up and show you here are the different targets that you can choose. So what type of package you want it to be. And then which you've converted. If you selected one and said launch, that one will be selected, but you can do it in bulk. And then you choose the platform. There's some additional settings you can set. Gives you a summary, and then it does the conversion. And this is what the tool actually looks like once it's actually running. You can see the status where some have had errors, some have succeeded, and you can also see the readiness information. So I said there's a bunch of tests and reports that we can run that are beneficial to keep you from going down a bad path. Two of those are highlighted here. So this MSIX readiness and virtualization readiness are looking at the installer and seeing, are there any things that we know about these installers that are likely to cause you trouble when you are trying to use them as a virtual app or trying to convert them to MSIX? So that can help guide you in what you need to do with it. It's not a good candidate for MSI, and you can resolve that outside the application. But from this perspective, it's going to run the automated installer, but you can also go through it manually, right? Because it is just a repackaging process. It's going to kick each one off in a virtual machine. So it's got the silent command line, and it will fire up the virtual machine, do the initial snapshot, do the silent installation, and then do the second snapshot, and then you get your result. That's the automatic process that's happening. So the hope is that you put 100 applications in there on Friday, say go, and then go home, come back Monday. You've got it's done. Do they all work? Do they, you saved yourself some time, and hopefully some of these packages you now don't have to work on individually. But I'm not going to pretend that there's a chance of 100% success. But it's a big time saver for sure. This is where you'd set the virtual machines. And then there's a wizard too, so you can go and select the applications you want, and then, this is all very straightforward. You could choose one or more different outputs. So if you're doing MSI or AppV, maybe you also want MSIX for everything, just so you have it. You could just check that box and have that ready for when you're ready for it. You choose the virtual machine, and it goes. So I didn't cut this time down so much that it's unrealistic. But if you are wrapping instead of repackaging, you're saving some time. If you are batch converting over the weekend, you're definitely saving yourself some time. So I'm averaging this up. The initial idea was to tell everybody about wrapping and how much time that can save, but a lot of hands went up. So I was right not to come here thinking I had some amazing new information for you guys. It's not really a new concept for a lot of people, but if you can take advantage of that when possible, take advantage of automation when possible, you can definitely cut down the time that you're spending on the packaging and repackaging state. So that gets us down to about 40%. So, and of course, this isn't going to be for every application. We're trying to average here. There'll be some applications I know you have that can take you days or a week or more to get done, and then others that you can be done with very, very quickly because they're simple. You've done them before. You understand it. So the one thing that's still big here is this identify stage. And I was thinking if there's only some way that we could get this part down, that would really change the game. And so I do have an improvement that addresses this research phase, and it's a new subscription that's available on top of AdminStudio to provide tested silent command line details for thousands of applications. So for about 1,500 of those, we can download right inside AdminStudio. So you get you look up the product, you say, yeah, this is the one I want. It downloads right inside AdminStudio. It gives you the tested, verified, silent installation command line. And then from there, you can wrap it, you can publish it, you could repackage it, you could send it off to the automated application converter and take advantage of the command lines there. It's pretty exciting. We've got a very large list of applications, and it continues to grow. And let me give you a quick peek at what it looks like. So there's a manual lookup here. You can look up by the product name or the vendor, and you'll get the results. So you can find exactly the setup that you're looking for and what type it is, what platform. Different vendors, one vendor might have 20 different installers for the same application because they've got one for 32, one for 64, one for all these different languages. So if that's the case, they'd just all be listed here. You pick the right one. So after you choose it, like I said, you can download it right inside the product. So you can go and get it directly from the vendor or just hit download and we'll pull it right into AdminStudio from here. And then you get your command line. So this is the command line that we've determined and tested and are recommending. And of course, if you know something, if you went to IT Ninja and found out that this other switch adds some additional functionality you want, you could add that here or edit it later, but it's an editable field coming in. And so that gets this part down, potentially down to nothing, right? So for the applications that are in that catalog, and there's no such thing as a package resource that covers every application there is. So this is optimistic that the application is in there, and you take advantage of these other things. We're getting that time down by 75%. So that's faster. How could that be even faster? If you automate that. So what you can do is basically take a list of applications and turn them into packages without doing any manual work. And the way that you can go about that is AdminStudio provides PowerShell commandlets for pretty much every function that the application performs. And so when we added the package feed module to AdminStudio, we added commandlets to drive it. So you can automatically look up an application by its name, by its vendor, and then take the results and do the download, do the wrap, do the publish, all automatically. So that source, it's cool to think that you could take your SCCM inventory and feed that to a script that looks them all up, downloads them all, packages them all up. That's pretty exciting, but next level exciting is the idea that you could run that every week or every day. And as soon as a new version for that application comes out, that's the one that it's downloading, wrapping, and has ready for you. So it's a very good way to be able to stay on top of these applications as new versions come out, which can be quite a challenge, as you all know. And there is an article that I posted just like a couple weeks ago that walks through that script. So I've got the script code is in this article, the whole PowerShell, so you can just download it and use it. There's some editable fields at the top that you update to match your environment. And then there's two ways you run the script. So the first way you can run the script, you can have it just do all the lookups. So your vendor and product name isn't going to be an exact match to the database. So what it will do is look them all up and show you the results. So it'll update your CSV file of vendors and packages to add a couple of rows. And those couple of rows will tell you if there was no match, one match, or multiple results, and then what the result was. And so then you would go through that list to fix it and say, okay, well, this one had 5 results, but this is the one I wanted. So that's the way it's worded. You take that, paste it into your main application name list so that the application name now matches. Then next time the script runs, it will be a perfect match and you'll get the right one. So if that didn't make sense, don't worry. I also made a video that goes with this article and script. It describes how to use the script, and then the video shows you, why this is interesting, and then walks you through actually using the script. So you run it, you do your matches, and then once it's right, you can have it just use that same list to keep all your applications up to date. And I left plenty of time for questions because I always get good questions here. So I made a bunch of claims about things that might be hard to believe, so I expect somebody to call me out on some of this. Any questions? Yes?
Do you recommend using MST transfer files or a command line PowerShell?
Okay, so the question was, do I recommend using MST transform files or just command line parameters? And I think it depends on what you need to do. With transform, you can add files, take files out, you can make any change. Whereas from the command line, you're limited to just the public properties. So if the only thing you need to do is set a couple of public properties, then maybe you save yourself the trouble of not having to manage a second file and take advantage of those. So if I can do it with the public property, I usually do. If I need anything more than that, then a transform is definitely the way to go. Yes?
So the automated download tool that you showed were a list of applications, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure in our environment, proxy will be blocking the download.
Okay.
Positive of that. So is downloading from your Flexera servers those sources, or like?
Yes.
I would basically need to download those sources.
Okay.
Is there
So,
a URL you can provide?
yeah. So the question was, in his environment, it's locked down. He would have to whitelist the ability to download vendor setups. And you wouldn't want to whitelist every vendor setup to get them directly from the vendors. We do actually host those downloads. So you would only have to whitelist our Flexera URL.
Okay, well, you don't have it publicly posted, so we would need
No.
to reach out to you or just
Yeah.
find out the trace.
Yep.
Okay, sure.
Yep.
How frequently are you updating the list of vendors and the updates? I mean, in terms of critical vulnerability, for example, Firefox.
Right.
Can you count on it? It's there directly, or?
Yeah, we're updating it on a daily basis. So whenever there's a new update, the list is updated, and then we have our series of tests, right? So we download it, we make sure it has no viruses, we make sure the MD5 matches, we run the silent install with our commands, make sure that it installs the way we expect it to. Then we also check to make sure after the fact that the version of the main file has been incremented and it was successful. So if it passes all those tests, then we put it up. But it usually happens within a day or two. So we're updating daily, but the list is updated even more frequently. We just have those additional tests to run to, which reminds me of something else that we're providing with the package feed module that I didn't mention, and that's the detection logic. So it's not just the download and the silent install, but also what you would look for to validate that this is the new installation, like you would put into the application model for a SCCM application publish. So we'll automatically populate that as well when we have it.
How many applications are hosted at the time?
How many applications? I should have known that question was coming and have my article up. So there are nearly 3,000 installers, and that's the most impressive way to say it. The reality is that that's actually a much smaller number of products because, like I said, a lot of vendors have many setups. So I did write an article. It's in the same place at community.flexera.com where I was very specific and said, okay, this is it, but that really means this many vendors, and that really means this many products. So I'm confident that we have more than anybody, so I'm not afraid to tell it exactly like it is. Yes?
Is there a public list at Flexera?
Yes. There is. The question was, is there a public list? And there is. So at the same site, you can view a list of all the applications. And I also made like a little 5-minute video that shows you how it works in the trial version of AdminStudio, or if you're just unlicensed for it, there's actually that interface exists, but instead of being able to search for whatever you want, there's like 6 results that are just static. So you can experience it for yourself. You just can't hit the whole database without a subscription. But the website has a list that is also updated daily that lists all the applications and vendors, and it has a filter capability so you can look for specific items.
Is it included in the enterprise license?
The question was, is it included in enterprise? It's not included. So it is an additional subscription, and it does not work with standard. So you have to have professional or enterprise. It doesn't matter how many copies, just one subscription would allow any number of AdminStudio instances you have to use the feed. Yes?
Yeah, what's the cost?
What's the cost? Talk to him. I'm not a sales guy. It is based on number of employees. So versus number of devices, because AdminStudio doesn't manage devices, so based on the size of your company. It is comparable to that of a patch catalog. So if you went to Avanti or Patch My PC to buy patches for your SCUP catalog or whatever, it's priced pretty much like that. So but it's competitive for sure. Yes?
As a follow-up with him, we package for other companies.
Mm-hmm.
So would that mean that if we have 10 companies with 1,000 people each, that means 10,000 licenses? Or?
We'd have to talk to you about it. We could work something out, but we haven't publicly proposed an MSP model yet because we just released it and we haven't had that conversation yet, but we'd love to.
And let's say you have an application that is not in the list.
Hmm.
Is there a process for requesting that application to be added to the list?
Yep.
What is the process?
Yep, you can request any application using our community right now. We may put a request form into the product in the future. Right now, we're saying just use our discussion forums, and we'll take any request and try to process it. So for the most part, the application has to be one that's publicly available. But that's, and then not every application has a silent installation command either. So another thing we're doing is if you got a package feed, they would say, well, that application is not available from the vendor, so we can't redistribute it, so it's not in our feed. The package feed still has it. It'll give you the command line, and it'll give you the detection logic, and you provide the file. So that way, instead of just saying, well, that vendor isn't playing in a way that we can do what we want to do, we give you what we can. So it's still very valuable, one, to know that there's a new version. That's super valuable. Then you get that silent command line, you get the detection. And if the vendor is blocking the installer from the public and you have to log in and get it, no big deal. You'd have to do that no matter what, right? So, yeah. Yes?
Does your deployment solution support automated installation of Microsoft Patches, MSP files?
Does AdminStudio support automatic publishing of MSP files? Automated deployment of MSP files. We're actually adding MSP support right now. So we will have MSP support. It'll be first half next year, hopefully Q1, maybe Q2. But that release is going to introduce the ability to create WSUS patches. And for that, we had to add MSP support, even though it's kind of not a lot of vendors are using MSPs. So it's a lot of work for a little payoff, but it is something that we decided we had to support. Yes?
To use the package feed module, do we need to use application catalog, cap all the applications in the application catalog?
I'm not sure I understood the question.
Let's say package feed module. If I want to automate and have a list of updates for every application, those applications should be in application catalog.
Yes, if you want, if you want to automate, it depends. Yeah, if you want to automate the whole thing, then they have to be in the catalog for us to be able to do the automatic new version, the automatic download. The rest of it can be automated. The script we published last year and did a session on talked about just take a setup, put it in a folder, and then we had a script, pick it up and process it all the way through. But this idea of automatically getting the latest version and a tested command line to automate that, it would have to be in the catalog. So the catalog is large, but doesn't contain everything. We'll take requests and add to it. But ultimately, anybody that pretends they're going to give you 100% coverage is lying. So our goal is to make things a lot easier, but we're not in the business of making it unnecessary to package anymore. Everybody still feel very secure in their job. Every time there's a new story about automation, it's like, oh, I'm going to automate myself out of a job, but it's impossible because as you know, there's so many edge cases and things that just don't work and things that don't make sense that you have to work through. Our goal really is to streamline it, make it faster so that you can spend time doing more of your time doing other things, not that you don't have to do it anymore. If that makes sense. Yes?
I have a question regarding the PADP, PowerShell toolkit, functionality to deploy it with AppManagEvent. So you showed us a way to have the template of the PADT and write the installation parameters into the PADT and deploy it automatically. But in my case, I have a little different PADT.
Okay. It is just writing in the install and uninstall parameters right now, but that would be an excellent enhancement. No one's asked for that before. So just basically a variable that you could replace for any metadata around that application, like its title or vendor, so that you can, we definitely could do that.
So could you write, you can also use PowerShell to make a wrapped package?
Yeah, you could use PowerShell.
But could you then also use PowerShell to write a PSADT file outside the framework on a share or something?
Yep. So you can use, it gets confusing. We're talking about using PowerShell to wrap a setup in PowerShell. So there's a lot of PowerShell in there, but yeah, you can do it outside, obviously, without AdminStudio. But we saw how popular PowerShell App Deploy Toolkit was, and decided we wanted to try to make it more popular by making it easy to use. So our concept was just a template, and then you right-click wrap, or you set it up. All my packages will always be wrapped, and it will just do it. But it's just updating that template. So then if there's an application-specific thing you want to do, you'd go in and edit after the fact. And then the ask here was that maybe we can replace some other variables in that script besides just the install and uninstall. Yes?
Maybe we can update that template with our custom entries.
Yeah, that was the idea of the template, was that you would customize it to what you wanted to be consistent in all of your packages. That way, ideally, if you don't have to tweak it at all, and yet that template is the way you want it, then there's nothing to do. You just hit wrap, and it's done. So ideally, because you can brand the PowerShell App Deploy Toolkit, you make it the colors of your organization and your logo, and choose the things that you want to have on for all your packages, and then that would be the default. And then anything you want to do special, you'd come in after the fact and edit it. Any other questions? All right. Well, if you think of anything later, I'll be at the booth and online always. Thank you for your time.